Welcome back to Supporting Physician Spouses. I'm going to tell you a story today. 28 weeks ago, I sat down in my dentist chair and said yes to something I had been looking at for years and quietly talking myself out of. And I'm going to tell you the whole story today because I think by the end of it, you're going to recognize something. Not about your teeth necessarily, but about something. Something that's been sitting quietly in the background of your life for longer than you probably want to admit. But first, let me take you back to the appointment. It was a completely routine, your 6-month checkup, cleaning, the usual. There was nothing special about it. I wasn't going in with any agenda beyond getting my teeth cleaned and getting on with my day. And then I noticed a pamphlet sitting on the counter. It was for clear, correct aligners. And after the appointment, I asked my dentist about it. I picked up the pamphlet and just casually started a discussion. There was no big decision, no dramatic moment. I was just curious. He kind of quickly walked me through what it was, what it could do, and whether he thought I would be a good candidate for it. And I thought, okay, let's actually look at this properly. So I scheduled a separate consultation, went back in, I sat down with him, we took some imaging, I heard the plan, I agreed to it. I paid, and I booked my appointment to pick up the aligners, and that was that. But here's what I want you to know. That pamphlet on the counter was not the first time that I had considered this, not even close. A few years earlier, all three of my then, 4 of them, we had children in braces, one right after the other and often overlapping. If you want to talk about a season of orthodontia, that was it. And somewhere in the middle of all of those appointments, sitting in the waiting room more times than I can count, I actually did meet with the orthodontist myself. I looked at the options. I considered just going ahead and getting full metal braces. And then I didn't. I don't even remember exactly why. I think it just felt like too much money going in that direction when all the kids needed theirs done, too much time, too much me, I suppose, too much focusing on something that was just for me when there were plenty of other places that money and attention and time could go. So I set it back down and I just kept going. And then a few years later, there was a pamphlet on the counter, and this time I picked it up and this time I followed through. Now, the only thing that was different the second time around is that I was finally giving myself permission to just want what I wanted. That's it. That was the whole difference. Not because someone told me that I had to, not like my kids who I was like, yes, you have to wear braces. And not because it was urgent or medically necessary or because anyone around me had ever noticed that some of my teeth were a little bit crooked. Nobody even would have called what I saw as a problem a problem. I said yes because I finally decided that I was allowed to solve a problem that I saw as a problem. And that decision, that small, quiet, completely personal decision just to say yes to the thing that I had been circling for years, that is what I want to talk to you about today. Because I think a lot of you are standing in front of your own versions of this moment. It's probably not the aligners, not the dentist office, but you have that thing, the thing that you have been circling, the thing nobody else would probably even notice, the thing you keep setting back down because there's always a reason to wait a little bit longer. We're going to get into all of it. So here's exactly the thing about the thing that was bothering me. It was not dramatic. Again, nobody looked at me and thought, wow, she should really do something about those teeth. I noticed it only on recording. So 8 years ago, when I started showing up on social media and recording myself and going on podcasts and giving interviews, I would notice that my bottom teeth overlapped a little bit. And I would watch a video of myself or a podcast recording or a clip of something, and I would catch it. And I would think about it for a little while, and then I would move on. Because that's usually what you do with a small bother, right? You notice it, you acknowledge it, you file it away, and you keep going. You've got bigger things to deal with. And I did have bigger things to deal with. We all do. And that's never not true. But here's the part I want to be really honest about because I think it matters more than the teeth part of this story. When I set it back down the first time, the story I told myself was that it wasn't the right time. The kids were all in braces, the money was going there, it made sense to wait. And that was partially true, but if I'm being completely honest with myself, that wasn't the whole story. The whole story was that spending that kind of money on something just for me, something that wasn't going to make me a better mother or a better partner or more productive in any measurable way, something that existed purely because I wanted it, just felt like too much. I think a lot of you know that feeling. It was internal. It was this low hum of, is this really necessary? Is this really worth it? Shouldn't that money go somewhere more important? Shouldn't we just save it? And the answer I keep coming back to without even fully realizing I was answering the question was no, it's not that important. You're just fine. Just move on. So I moved on for years. And then I picked up that pamphlet and something had shifted. I don't know exactly when it shifted or what caused it. I just know that this time when I asked myself that same question, is it really worth it? The answer that came back was different. Yes, it was worth it because I wanted it. And that's enough. I want to stay here for a minute because I think this is the part of the story that applies to you too. Everybody has something like this. I genuinely believe that. Some small bother that lives in the background of life. Something you've learned to accept because the alternative felt like too much to ask for, too indulgent, too hard to justify. Or maybe it's something that you've made peace with, sort of, because peace felt more available than change at that moment. And here's what I want to offer you. You can absolutely keep accepting it. That is a completely valid choice. And I'm not here to tell you that every small bother in your life needs to be addressed immediately. But some things do matter. Some things have been mattering quietly for a long time, and the only reason they haven't been addressed is that you haven't yet decided that you're wanting it to be different is a sufficient reason to do something about it. It is. Your wanting it is enough. It was always enough. That is the thing I wish someone had told me years earlier when I was sitting in that orthodontist waiting room, putting myself last again. You don't have to earn the right to want what you want. You don't have to justify it to anyone, including yourself. Wanting it is the whole reason. So here's where the dentist comes back into the story, because somewhere in the last 28 weeks, I realized something. What my dentist was doing for my teeth is exactly what a coach does for everything else. And I want to walk you through how it actually works, because I think there's a lot of confusion about what coaching is, what it isn't, and what it actually looks like in practice. And this does a better job of explaining it than anything else I've come up with. We're going to start at the consultation. My dentist did not sit down across from me and say, here is what I think you should do. Here is what your teeth are going to look like. Trust me and write the check. That's not exactly how it happened. He took images. He looked at where I was actually starting. He showed me what he was seeing. He walked me through his thinking. And then he laid out a plan that was specific to my situation. Not a generic plan, not the same plan he gives everyone, but a plan based on what my teeth were actually doing and what I was actually trying to accomplish. Then he told me what my part was. Wear the trays, 22 hours a day, every day of the week. Swap them out every 2 weeks. Show up every 8 weeks so he could look at the images and see where things were and where he needed to make adjustments if needed. And then he was very clear about something. He could not guarantee the outcome if I didn't follow the plan. The results were directly tied to my participation. He had no control over what happened when I left his office. None. Whether I wore the trays or left them sitting on my bathroom counter was entirely up to me. He couldn't want it for me. He couldn't do it for me. He couldn't make it happen if I wasn't willing to do my part. That is what a coach does. She is not someone who tells you exactly what to do and then hands you the result. What a coach does is take a clear, honest look at where you actually are starting. Not where you think you should be, not where you wish you were, but where you actually are right now in this season, in this marriage, in this life. And then she helps you see what is possible from there. Because I think one of the things that keeps women from starting is that they can't quite picture what the other side looks like. They can certainly feel what's wrong. They can name the gap between how their life looks and how it feels. But the path from here to somewhere better feels very foggy, unclear, like something other women get to have, but maybe not her. That is what the consultation is for. That's what the imaging is for. You can't make a plan until you know what you're actually working with. And then once the plan is built, a coach shows up every single time. Not just at the beginning when the motivation is high. A coach shows up, takes a look at where things are, and adjusts the plan if needed. No shame, no starting over, just an honest assessment and a next step. I will take the images. I will build the plan. I will assess and adjust and stay in it with you for as long as it takes. But the doing is yours. The showing up is ours together. And I think there's something really beautiful and freeing in that, actually, because it means the outcome is yours too, not something that happened to you, something that you built, something you did, something that belongs to you completely because you were the one who wore the trays. Now, I'm also going to tell you about a stubborn tooth because this part of the story is for a very specific woman, and I think she knows who she is. She is the one who has tried all the things before. Maybe she's read the books and nodded along to all of it and felt genuinely hopeful for a stretch and then landed back in the same place. Or maybe she tried a coach or a program or a course and it helped for a while and then life got loud again and the progress quietly unraveled. Maybe she has tried so many things that hoping again feels genuinely dangerous, like she can't afford to spend that emotional currency one more time and come back empty. If that's you, this part is for you specifically. When I started the aligner process, my dentist gave me an estimated timeline of about 22 weeks. That was his best assessment based on where I was starting and where we were trying to go. It wasn't a guarantee. It was just his honest projection based on what he was seeing. And then I have this one tooth that just didn't cooperate. Everything else on the plan was tracking fine. Everything was doing exactly what it was supposed to do, but this one tooth had its own timeline, apparently. So my dentist took new images, submitted the scans to the vendor, came back to me with a revised plan, 11 more aligners, same process, just more of it than we originally anticipated. And here is what nobody said. The dentist did not say I had failed the program. Did not suggest that maybe the clear aligners just weren't going to work for me. Didn't imply that the stubborn tooth was a character flaw or evidence that I wasn't committed enough or trying hard enough. It was just a tooth. It needed more time than we thought it would. That's it. So we looked at things where they actually were, adjusted the plan, and kept going. That was it. That was the whole response. New images, honest assessment, revised plan. No drama, no shame, no starting over from scratch. At 28 weeks now, my teeth already look really good. I'm really happy with them. Genuinely, they are noticeably better than where I started. Good enough that at one point I actually caught myself thinking, this might be enough. This is so much better than it was. I'd be happy if I just stopped here. I want to sit with that for a second because I think that thought is incredibly human and incredibly common and also incredibly worth examining. It was better. They all look amazing, significantly better. The thing that used to catch my eye on recordings wasn't anymore. The progress was real and visible, and I could feel it every time I put the trays in. And somewhere during that progress, a little voice showed up and said, you know what? This is pretty good. Maybe you've done enough. Maybe you don't need to see it all the way through. And I almost listened to that voice. But I didn't because I knew what I had originally set out for. And I knew that settling for better than before is not the same thing as what I came for. Better than before is wonderful. It is genuinely worth celebrating, but it is not a reason to stop before you get to where you were actually headed. And I think about this a lot in the context of coaching because I have seen this happen. A woman starts, does some of the work, things get better, the resentment quiets down a little bit, the conversations with her husband feel slightly less loaded, she's sleeping better, she feels a little bit more like herself, and somewhere in that progress, the same voice shows up. This is pretty good. Maybe this is good enough. And sometimes she stops. Not because the work is done, but because better than before feels like enough when you've been in survival mode long enough. When you've been so far below the surface, just getting closer to it feels like the whole destination. I understand that. I really do. But there is a difference between better than before and actually living the life you came here to build. And you deserve to know what that second thing feels like, not just the relief of things being less hard, the actual thing. I haven't finished. I don't have a final result to show you. I'm 4 to 5 months away from being completely done, sitting here with a brand new set of aligners and a revised timeline and a stubborn tooth that apparently had opinions about the original plan. And I already know that when I get to the end of this, the first thought I'm going to have is not, I'm so glad everything worked out the way it did. Everything happens for a reason, and this was exactly the right moment. It's going to be the same thing I already feel building underneath all of it right now, 28 weeks in and still going. And that is, I wish I had done this sooner. I wish I had followed through the first time I sat in the orthodontist waiting room while my teenagers got their braces adjusted. I wish I had decided sooner that my wanting was a good enough reason, that it didn't need to be urgent or necessary or justifiable to anyone else, that I was allowed to just want something for myself and act on it. I can already feel that truth from right here inside the middle of the process. I don't need to be done to know it. And here is what I want to tell you about that sentence, because I've been doing this work long enough to know that it's not mine alone. I have never once had a woman finish our work together and say the timing was perfect. Not one. Not a single woman has sat across from me at the end of our time together and said, you know what, I'm really glad I waited as long as I did. I'm so grateful I didn't start sooner. That is not what I hear. What I hear consistently from nearly every woman I work with is some version of that same sentence said in different words, in different ways, with different specific details, but underneath all of it, the same quiet truth. I wish I had done this sooner. Not because the circumstances lined up into the way she had been waiting for them to. Just because she finally stopped waiting. She finally decided that her wanting something different was a sufficient reason to do something about it. And once she made that decision and started doing the work, the fact that she had spent years circling it before she gave herself permission, that part was hard to sit with. The years she spent telling herself it wasn't the right time, the seasons she moved through carrying the quiet bother of her life not matching how it looked from the outside, the mornings she still woke up bracing, still over-functioning, still managing everything and everyone with no one managing her in return, the conversations she didn't have, the version of herself she kept putting off getting to know again, all of that sitting right up against the simple reality that she could have started sooner. And I'm not telling this to make you feel behind. Somewhere underneath all the busyness and the managing and the holding it all together, you know. And I think part of you has been waiting for someone to tell you that you're wanting something different is a good enough reason to do something about it. That you don't have to wait until it gets worse. That you don't have to earn the right to start by suffering long enough or reaching some threshold of crisis that finally justifies it. So here it is, as plainly as I can say it. Your wanting it is enough. It was always enough. And the sooner you decide that, the sooner you stop being the woman who wishes she had done this sooner. So if something in this episode stirred something in you, I want you to stay with that feeling for a minute before you move on to the next thing. Because I know how easy it is to listen to something, to feel it land and think, yes, that's me. that's exactly what I've been carrying. And then put your phone down and go unload the dishwasher and let the moment pass. I know because I have done that more times than I want to admit. Consumed something that cracked something open a little and then promptly filled the crack back in with the next item on the list. I don't want that to happen today. So before you move on, I just want to ask you something simple. What is your thing? The small bother that has been living in the background of your life, the thing you've been noticing and then filing away and moving on from it because it didn't feel urgent enough or important enough, or because you weren't sure you were allowed to want it to be different. What is it? You don't have to have an answer right now. You don't have to have it all figured out or be able to articulate it clearly or know exactly what doing something about it would even look like. You just have to be willing to sit with the question honestly for a minute instead of immediately moving past it. Because here is what I know after decades of this life and years doing this work. The women who are still waiting for the right time, still telling themselves it will feel better when the schedule settles or the kids are older or things calm down a little, they are not waiting because the time isn't right. They are waiting because they haven't yet decided that they're wanting something different is a sufficient reason to act. And the women who've stopped waiting, who have looked at their quiet bother and said, okay, enough, I am going to do something about this, they picked up the pamphlet. They scheduled the consultation. They showed up for the first appointment. That is all that is between where you are right now and where they are. If you are ready to take that first step, here is what I want you to do. Head over to itgetsbetternow.com. You can learn more about what working together actually looks like, what coaching with me involves, and whether it feels like the right fit for where you are right now. And if something there resonates, I want to invite you to schedule a consultation. It's just a conversation. It's not a commitment. There's never any pressure, no obligation beyond showing up and being honest about where you are. It is like the consultation with the dentist. This is your chance to pull up imaging, take an honest look at where you are starting, and figure out what the plan might look like from here. You don't have to know if it's the right decision before you schedule it. That is what the conversation is for. And if you are not there yet, that is okay. Keep listening. Keep showing up here every week. This community is not going anywhere, and neither am I. I will be right here every week with more of this, more stories, more honesty about what this life actually requires and what is possible inside it. But if you have been circling something for a while now, if there is a quiet bother that you have been making peace with for longer than you want to admit, if some part of you listened to this episode today and thought, that is me, that is exactly where I am, I just want you to know that you don't have to keep accepting it. It gets better now, not eventually, not when the timing is finally right, not when the circumstances line up the way you've been waiting for them to. Now. I'll see you next week.